Good morning, Pastor Jason, and this is our Wednesday Digging Deeper, that time where we dig a little deeper. Very obvious name there. We dig a little deeper into this past Sunday sermon and maybe remind you a little bit of that and encourage you to be living out what it is that we heard this week. We were beginning John chapter 13, and for us, this is a new series in the Gospel of John. It's our third series of 4 that we'll be doing through the whole Gospel of John. And now we're kind of in the upper room, these lessons from the upper room. And it gives us a picture of the heart of Jesus. And John 13, the first story there is a pretty familiar one for us. It's the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And he goes through all of this, and he says, this is an example, right, that I've laid out for you. And it is this example for how we are to serve one another. Jesus, who is the creator of heaven and earth, who made everything. Paul tells us what Colossians, that through him, for him, and by him, everything was made. Nothing that is made has made that he hasn't been a part of, and it's to his glory as well. Humbled himself, got down on his hands and knees, and did the lowliest of tasks for a slave, of washing feet. And I encourage you, if you haven't already, go back and I always say, don't touch your face, don't touch your face. I always touch my face, sorry. If you haven't already, if you weren't there Sunday, go back and watch Sunday's sermon. It was an awesome day. It was a great day of worship. Honestly, I love it. I love our teams that everybody puts together. So I hope that you're coming out in person for those. But if not, you can double check and watch those on YouTube, and you can get caught up a little bit. But this idea of humility, the humility of Christ, this is our example. It's the example of how we live out everything that we're called to live out. Paul talks about this idea of living out our gifts. Everybody is given by the Spirit these spiritual gifts that are used to build up the church and to glorify God. So each one of them is used and needed in the church for each other. It's this common thing for the common good, the one Spirit and the one love that we have. But Paul says in Romans 12, he says, "For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function, so we, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another." He goes through and talks about these different gifts. Paul talks in 1 Corinthians 12, unpacking these gifts that we have. And it's that we exercise these gifts in humility. We exercise these gifts with the example of Christ in mind, not thinking more of ourselves than we should, understanding that my gifts that I've been given, these abilities or gifts, whatever they are, in the church are for the glory of God and to the benefit of others. And it's not me, it's Christ in me. And I think it's important when Paul's laying out in 1 Corinthians 12 these spiritual gifts and really unpacking that. He says, and at the end of that chapter, he's like, hey, and this is the good way. And then it goes into 1 Corinthians 13. And this is what we call the love verse, right? Love is patient, love is kind, and it goes through all these things that love is. But when you put those things together in context, Paul's like, here's all the spiritual gifts, and here's how they're applied, and here's how they're lived out in love. So with these spiritual gifts, and they're lived out in love. And this is what we're called to do. If you think back to the first of our story in John chapter 13, John set in the context, and he's talking about, Jesus knew that God had given everything unto his hand, and this was the hour, and that he had loved those who he had given him, and he loved them to the end, loved them to the uttermost. The context for Jesus humbling himself and doing these things was because he loved them. And so the context for us not thinking of ourselves more than we should, of thinking of others more than ourselves, is the love, right? And it's the love of Christ working in and through us. And so as we go through this week, as we are going through our days, I hope that you are taking on this, the example of Christ, that you are allowing God to conform you into his image, that you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind, by reading the scriptures, by going through devotions like this. And we look at our lives and say, what does it look like to have the humility of Christ? What does it look like to exercise all the things that God's given me, all the blessings and gifts in love? And am I doing those things? And so that is our hope, and that is my prayer, that we are living out the love of Christ, and we are doing it with the humility of Christ. For me, there's nothing worse than somebody that's a pretentious person. And I think that's, you want that real person, that genuine love, genuine humility, not this pretentious attitude or aspect of that. So we do all those things. May we do all that we're called to do in Christ, in His love, following His example. So that's your word for today. Quick one, drop it in. Get about your work week. As we say, body, body, rowdy, rowdy. All right. We love you. Hope to see you. It's Wednesday, so that means youth are going on. It means kids are going on. Men's Bible study, women's Bible study here at the church, 511 Tuckasegee Road. Starts at 6:30, goes till 8 tonight. Don't forget, worship as always, 11 o'clock on Sunday. And you can always check up anything. Go to your app store, whether it's the Google Play Store or the iTunes Store. Download the Tuckasegee app. Keep up with everything that's going on. Sermons, Bibles, devotions, all those things are out there. Calendar, sign up for stuff. You can always go to tuckasegee.com and figure out there. You can give. You can do everything. Watch us, follow us on all the socials. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, share it. On Facebook, share it out there. Instagram, however, whenever, and wherever you're watching this. I pray that it's a blessing to you and that you're sharing it with others. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.